building code, and we just started off with the Kerala building regulation rules, Kerala building rules. So I hope I'm presenting my screen. I hope everyone is able to see my screen. And yes, so until where we have discussed in the last class. We have discussed about the different volumes in National Building Code and the relevance of NBC. And we have started with building rules in Kerala. And we just had a quick look at the history of building rule formation in Kerala and when all the amendments came. So these are the chapters in KMBA 2019. In chapter 1, each chapter contains respective inclusions in it. In chapter 1, it is definitions. Chapter drawings, permits, and occupancy certificates. Chapter 3, general provisions regarding site and building requirements. So different chapters has different provisions in it, and the specifications are also mentioned in different chapters. So next, the just think that like all this chapter wise, you need not study in detail. Just have an idea what all things are included in each chapter. Just study in that chronological order where you have different things to be included in different chapters. We need not go in much detail about MDR. So next we'll discuss the basic terminologies in building rules and regulations. So first thing is about permit. So permit means a permission or authorization in writing by the secretary to carry out work. So before we construct a building or a project, first thing we need to get approval from the local authority. So it should be in accordance with the local rules and regulations carried out. So it will be different. It will be slightly different for each of the local self-governing bodies. So it may not be the same for if you want to construct a house on a corporation, and it won't be the same if you want to construct in some Gram Panchayat. So you need to understand that each of the these local self-governing bodies will have a specific role in it, and in most of the cases, most of the local self-governments governing bodies will have a common rule, but there will be also a slight difference according to the depending upon the location of that particular building. Like if you want to construct a house close to a water body, that provisions will be different. So all these things will be considered for the permit, and we will get an authorization from the secretary of the particular local self-governing body, whether it's a panchayat, municipality, or corporation, to carry out the work. That's not the permit. It's actually a permission or authorization in writing by the secretary carry out the work. It should not be by words. You should get a proper document by it. It should be a proper written document with the seal and signature of the secretary, so that we can proceed the work. So while they check for the while we apply for the permit, they will check all the provisions, whether our building is in accordance with the provisions laid out by that particular authority. If it is not, they will ask us to revise the same, and will ask us to submit it again. So this is another permit. And the second terminology is site. So site is actually a parcel of land enclosed by different boundaries. So it's also called as plot. I hope you understood what's meant by a site. So it's actually a place where we are going to construct the particular building. So the proper definition is a parcel of land enclosed by definite boundaries. It should have a definite boundary. We can't just say that we can just point out at some place without any boundaries, and we can't say we are going to construct over there. We need to provide a proper boundary, and we have to say that a particular building will be enclosed inside that boundary. So a site should have a very definite boundary, and it's a parcel of a land. So this is also called as plot. So I hope you understood the terminology named site. So next is setback line. So a line usually parallel to the plot boundaries and laid down in each case by the authority, beyond which nothing can be constructed. except the compound wall towards the south boundaries. So there will be always a setback line. It's actually a line which is parallel to the plot boundaries, and it will be laid on by in each case by the authority, beyond which nothing can be constructed. Suppose like we will have to give a particular gap between the road and a building. In that gap, we are not allowed to construct anything. So usually there will be some defined uh, depth of the line. That means the width that need to be maintained, and in that width nothing shall be constructed. That's known as setback line. So it will be usually parallel to the plot boundary, and it will be something like 3 meter from the front boundary, 2 meter from the sides. So it will be different in different cases. So this is known as a setback line. In that particular area, we should not construct anything. So that's known as setback line. And the next open space, you might have heard about setback line in many cases where people used to break the rule of the setback line, and they will construct and they will expand their particular building beyond the setback line. And if that happens, the authority has the permission to demolish that particular building. So there should not be any construction activity that is to be done between the plot boundary and the setback line. So it will be parallel to all the boundaries of the particular plot, whatever the shape of the boundary, shape of the plot, whether it be a triangle, whether it be a rectangle or a square, or any other multidimensional plot, it will be parallel to each side of that particular plot. There will be a laid down line, and we should not construct anything beyond that line. So I hope you understood what's meant by setback line. And next we will discuss about open space. So open space means an area. Open space means an area forming an integral part of the plot left open to the sky. So each building should have an open space. So front yard or open space means an open space extending laterally along the front side. So there will be a front yard. It's known as the open space. Similarly, there will be some backyard or rear yard, side yards. So there will be a different open space. All these things where it is left open to the sky. That means there is nothing constructed in that place. Is known as open space. And this is what we talk about the setback line. So for an open space, one side will be the boundary of the plot, and the other side will be defined by the setback line. So the area between the setback line and the boundary of the plot is known as open space. So it's an area forming an integral part of the plot which is left open to the sky. So in different cases, it will be used for different purposes. For example, if it's in many of the cases, we can use the open space for parking and gardening and all those things. So that's known as the open space. So in the front yard, means an open space extending laterally along the front side. So it will be on the front side of the building, and the rear yard means the open space extended laterally along the rear side of the plot. That means front side and backyard, front yard and backyard. Then side yards means the open space extending laterally between the side of the building and the boundary of the plot. That's facing the other front and rear yard. I think you have understood. Don't get confused by these long definitions. This is simply the open space means either if it's the open space is at the front side of the building is known as front yard. If it's on the back side of the building, it's known as the rear yard, and similarly on the sides of the building, it's known as side yard. So each open space will have a definite defined area to be followed. Like the minimum area you need to keep for a building. There are some provisions for that. So, and next terminology, I hope you have understood the terminologies explained in this slide. Those were permit, site, setback line, open space. And in the next slide, we will discuss about the terminology known as plot area. So this simply the plot area means the area enclosed between the plot boundaries. So this consists of the open space along with the build-up area. That means the area on which the building is constructed, and also the open space. So this is known as the plot area, the area enclosed between the plot boundaries. And next is covered area. So covered area means the ground area covered by the building and is synonymous to area of the building That means it is similar to the area of the building footprint. It shall include covered parking. Does not include the spaces covered by garden, rockery, well, all those things. So you need to understand that covered area will be similar to the area of the building footprint. That means it will also include covered parking, and building will be covered, and along with that, covered parking will also be included in the covered area, which is not open to the sky. It's known as covered area. In covered area, it does not include the spaces covered by garden, rockery, well and well structures, plant, nursery, water tank, swimming pool if it is uncovered, platform around a tree, tank, fountain bench, and other things like that, and also drainage, culvert, conduit, catch pit, gully pit, drainage chamber. So all these terms will come in the next module. You will understand. You know what's meant by drainage, culvert, etc. The gutter means all these things are for the proper drainage purposes. So all these things will not be included in covered area. Even though in many cases it is the drainage might be covered, still we will not take those areas covered area. And next, the flight of steps and ramp all open to sky, cantilevered carporch. So, cantilevered carporch will also not be considered. You need to understand that a cantilevered carporch means there will not be any pillars in it. The slab of the carporch or the roof of the carporch will be directly in contact with the wall of the building. So there won't be any pillars for that, any column for that particular carporch. So cantilevered carporch will also will not come under covered area. So even though it is covered to the top, it won't come under covered area. And the compound wall, gate, slide, swing areas covered by sunshade and the like. So wherever there are pillars or columns, only those area will come under covered area. And those stories fully below the ground level. It is also not included in covered area. If there are stories below the ground level, those areas will also not be taken as a covered area. And I hope you have understood what is meant by covered area. If anyone has any doubt on covered area, you can ask me. Does anyone have any doubt regarding covered area? Have you understood? Is it clear? Is Akib here? Akib, I mean. Akib?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to follow what I'm saying? Okay, Akib, could you please respond? Are you able to follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thanks, Akib. And next is coverage. We have done with covered area, and next is coverage. The coverage means the percentage of covered area with respect to plot area. That means it is the area. It is obtained by dividing the covered area by the plot area. So it's known as the percentage of covered area with respect to plot area. So you need to understand that if the plot area is like 20 meter square, and the building area or the covered area is around 10 meter square, then the coverage will be equal to 10 meter square divided by 20 meter square into 100. Covered area will be 50%. That means 50% of the plot area will be covered. That's known as coverage. So next slide we'll be discussing about the provisions to be followed while constructing a building as per Kerala Municipal Building Rules 1999. So before that, I need to make sure that everyone have understood all these terminologies. So if I ask each of the terms, could you explain? Let me first call Adarsh. Adarsh K.
Yes, sir.
So Adarsh, what did you understand by the term permit?
So permit mean permission in written by the local government. to access the land.
Yeah, that means it's a permission given by the local authority to carry forward with our work. So they will consider all the provisions and all those checks will be made whether we are following the rules and regulations and whether we have uh, uh, followed the local provisions for constructing a building, and based on that they will give us a permission to continue the work. That's known as permit. And thanks, others. Next I'll call Alan Joseph. Alan
Yes,
Joseph,
sir. Yes,
could you
sir.
please explain the next two terms, site and setback line, in your own words? You need not read out from the screen. You can directly
The,
tell us.
so the area where we want to build uh, the area of ground on which a building is constructed.
Okay, so what's the main thing in that? We should have a definite boundary.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that's known as site. This
And
can also be called as
it's
plot.
also called plot.
Yeah. And what do you understand by setback line?
Uh, it's a parallel. It's a line usually parallel to the plot.
Could you please explain it to your own words? Uh,
So, sir,
could you please explain it in your own words? Like, what did you understand by setback line?
uh, it's the distance which a building must be set back from a road or the boundary.
Okay, yeah, almost, yeah, almost correct. That means it should be the distance which need to be maintained from the a line drawn at a point which the building needs to be constructed, and the distance should be maintained from the plot boundary. That's known as the setback line. So good, Alan. So
Thanks.
Alina, Gigi,
Yes, sir.
Alina, what did
Yes.
you understand by open space?
Opening space extending along the sides of plot.
Okay, yeah, almost. So, which is like, is it left open to sky or it is covered?
What, sir?
Is it left open to sky? Open space. Those area which is left open to sky. That's known as open space.
Okay, sir.
And based on the location of that particular open space with respect to the building, the terms of that particular open space will change. For example, if the open space is on the front side of the building, it's known as front yard, and it's on the back side of the building, it's known as the rear yard, and similarly on the sides. So this is known as
Okay, sir.
open space. So next is
Okay, sir.
yeah, plot area means you understood the area enclosed between the boundaries of that particular plot or site. That's known as the plot area. And Anjita Nambiar.
Yes, sir.
Anjita, could you please explain what is meant by covered area and what all things will come under covered area?
Ground area covered by the building.
Okay,
It comes
so is
under garden, drainage, well, etc.
it should not include those things. It does not include space covered by garden. Understand? That's not
Okay, sir.
that's of the uncovered area. Covered area does not include uh,
Okay, sir.
garden, crockery, well structures, plant, nursery, water tank, etc. Whatever things which is kept uncovered. And also, what do you understand by cantilever porch, cantilever car porch? I will highlight those terms. Do you see the mouse pointer moving?
Yes, sir.
So, what did you understand by cantilevered car porch? Do you have any idea?
Uh, sir, pillars ഇല്ലാതെ വാളുമായിട്ട് ഡയറക്റ്റ് കണക്ട് ചെയ്തിട്ട്.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Good, Anjana. So that's known as cantilevered car porch. So that
Thank you, sir.
won't come under covered area. So this will be considered as an open area. So, and similarly, area covered by sunshade, because here also sunshade doesn't have any pillars, and but sunshade is directly connected to the wall. So the area covered by sunshade will also be taken as third area. And if you see on the means coverage means you understood the a percentage of the area covered with respect to the plot area. So it will be expressed in terms of percentage. And I think you have understood and need not explain much on coverage. And if you see on the right bottom of the screen, you can see it is not as clear. You can see the building. There's a building mentioned on the top side, and below that it's a footprint of the building. That means it's actually the shade of that building. So what happens is like building footprint means if we actually the shadow which comes on the ground of the building, if we give a source of light directly above the building, the shape of the shadow exactly below the particular building is known as building footprint. So I hope you understood what's meant by building footprint. Actually the view of the building from the top side, and it's known as building footprint. So I hope it's clear. The figure is not as clear as we expected to be displayed. So I will move on to the next slide. So these are some requirements to be followed and the building rules to be followed while we are building a house or a residential apartment or similar things. So we'll be focusing on KMBR, and as per Kerala Municipal Building Rules 1999, so exterior open spaces are necessary for proper lighting and ventilation requirements. So the basic idea is buildings should not be very close to each other. There should be a gap between the buildings. So in order to maintain this gap, what we usually do is like we will ask them to we will provide them and we will lay down a setback line, as we have seen earlier. Setback line. So beyond the setback line, even though it's their own plot, even though they own the plot, beyond that setback line, they are not allowed to construct anything. That means around the building there should be spaces. So this is known as there will be some spaces in it. So there will be some different types of building laid down as per the Kerala Municipal Building Rules 1999. So we'll see what are those. So in first we'll talk about buildings which are less than 10 meters height. That means building up to 10 meters height. So for any building which is up to 10 meters height, there should be a minimum of 3 meter depth. The depth means here it doesn't mean that we have to dig something. Here depth means actually the horizontal distance. Depth, here it is many people might get confused with the term depth, but we need to understand that it doesn't mean the vertical distance. It is the horizontal distance from the boundary. So there should be at least 3 meter width or depth from the there should be a 3 meter width from the boundary line on the front side, and on the rear side there should be 2 meter depth. Depth means it should have a gap between the boundary of the building and the wall of the building. So the rear yard should be 2 meters in width, but the correct term is like we will express in term of depth. So you should not get confused by the terms depth. Here depth means it is the horizontal distance, not the vertical distance. As we are familiar with the term depth, it's not the vertical distance, but the horizontal distance from the boundary. So in the front side, the minimum there should be a gap of 3 meters from the boundary line, and should be maintained throughout the building boundary, and that means the wall of the building. Wherever the wall of the building is to be constructed, it should have a 3 meter gap from the front side, and on the rear side there should be 2 meters gap. And the side open space means a minimum side yard of 1.2 meters on one side and minimum 1 meter on the other side. So it is not necessary to maintain 1.2 on the other and on both the sides, but at least in one side there should be 1.2 meters, and if that's the case, then the other side a minimum depth of 1 meter is to be maintained. So is there any confusion in the term depth? Can anyone respond?
No, sir.
Okay, depth in this particular context, depth means the horizontal distance. You need to understand that. And next building, we will be talking about above 10 meters in height. So in about, if the building is above 10 meters, and you need to understand that basically if it's a residential building, most probably the height of the building will be something around 3.5 meters or 3 meters or 4 meters maximum. But in some cases, that means up to 10 meters means if it's a two-story building, the maximum height might reach around 9 meters or something. But if it's a institutional building or a factory building, etc., each story will have greater height, might be 5 meters or 6 meters or etc. So the total height, if it's a you might have noticed in your schools that it's not, it will be much higher than what you have seen in your home. The height of the ceiling will be much higher than that in your home. So depending upon the type of the building and the number of stories, the height of the building will also vary. So if the building is about 10 meters, the total building means the we'll take the measurement from the ground level. And if the height of the building is greater than 10 meters, then in the front space, we should first leave a 3-meter gap, and then for every additional 3 meter above 10 meter, the front gap, that means the front depth of the open space, should be 3 meter plus 0.5 meter for every additional 3 meter. That means if the height of the building is 13 meter, 13 meter, then the front open space depth should be 3.5 meter. And if it is 16 meters, that means the height of the building is 16 meters, then the front open space depth should be 4 meter. That means for every additional 3 meters beyond 10 meter height of the building, we will need to add 0.5 meter front space. So that's the reason why a high-rise building will have a greater open space in the front, on the sides, whether it's front side or back side or either side. So I hope you understood. And next is the rear opening side. Same thing we will follow. If it is below 10 meters or up to 10 meters, we will leave a 2-meter gap on the back side. And if it is for every additional 3 meters, we will add 0.5 meter open gap on the rear side. And then along the sides, either left side or right side of the building. So depending upon the same thing, for every 3-meter height, we will add 0.5 meter each. If it's on the one side, it will be 1.2 meter, and the other side will be 1 meter up to 10 meter height of the building. And if the height of the building is 13 meter, what will happen? On the one side, we will have to leave 1.2 plus 0.5. That means 1.7 meter on one side, and on the other side should be 1.5 meter. And if the height of the building is 16 meters, on one side we should leave 2.2 meters on one side, and on the other side should be 2 meters. So depending upon the height of the building, for every 3-meter height beyond 10 meter, we will we need to add 0.5 meter each for the gap. So I hope you have understood from the table. If you have any doubt, you can ask. If it's not clear, you can ask. Don't worry. I don't think you might be confused. Still, if you have any confusion regarding the same, you can ask me. So if no one is voluntarily asked from your side, then I'll talk about the buildings above 4 stories from the ground level. So we'll in the first type of the building, we have seen buildings up to 10 meters height. The second type, the buildings is above 10 meters height, and in the third type, we'll talk about the buildings which are above 4 stories on the ground level. So in that case, we'll have to leave a minimum 5 meter which will be provided on any one side contiguous to front side. So a minimum open space of 5 meters to be provided on any one side contiguous to front side. So it will be different as I explained earlier. If that building is beyond 4 story, if the building is, suppose if it is a 5-story building, we should leave 5 meter on any one side. Next to the front side. So this is what the third for the 4-story. Next, all of the provisions will be similar. So you need to understand that in the I hope you have understood the third one. If there is any clarity issue, you can ask. So I'll explain it once again. So contiguous to front side means either it can be on the left side or the right side. This means the height of the number of stories is beyond 4 stories. We should measure the height of the building, and for the front open space and rear open space, we shall follow the same procedure that we have followed earlier. And for the side open space, we should leave a 5 meter for any of the side, minimum 5 meter for any of the side. Understood? So the front and rear open space will be similar. We'll have the similar calculations that we have talked earlier for buildings up to 10 meters and beyond 10 meters. It's the same calculation will follow. And but for the side spaces, what happens is like we'll have to leave 5 meter on any one side. And in the fourth type of building, you see buildings constructed in small plots. If the area of the plot is less than 125 square meter, in some cases it will not be easy for us to construct, get land, because the cost of the land will be very high. So in some cases, since there will be no other option for us, so we'll have to leave with the plot area is less than 125 square meter. So those areas known as small plots. In such situation, it is not necessary to leave a spacing of 3 meter on the front side, but we can provide 1.8 meter on the front side. And then similarly on the back side, we can just provide 1 meter on the back side. And similarly, there will be also some reduction which can be applied on the sides. That means 0.1 meter, 0.9 meter should be maintained on one side, and 0.6 meter should be maintained on the other side. So these are the type of the building and how we are going to give spacing on each side of the building. So next thing is regarding the permissible coverage and floor area ratio. Before that, I need to make sure that everyone have understood each front spaces to be maintained for each type of building. So let me call out your names in random, and I'll ask you some questions. So is Vaibhav here? Vaibhav? Vaibhav?
Hello.
Yeah, Vaibhav. Vaibhav, could you please respond?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Vaibhav, suppose the height of the building is 8 meters.
Yeah.
Okay. So what should be the open space, the depth of the open spaces provided on the sides of the building? Are you able to answer my question?
No, sir.
Vaibhav?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are you able to answer my question? Are you in front of some television or something?
No, sir.
You know, what's the disturbance in the background?
Mic problem.
Okay. So just answer my question. If the height of the building is 8 meters, then what should be the spacing that need to be provided on each side of the building? Vaibhav, are you able to answer my question, or should I ask anyone else?
3 meter minimum.
Okay, on which side?
Front side.
And on the rear side?
Rear side minimum 2 meters.
Okay. And on the other two sides?
Other two sides to 1 meter, 1.2 meter.
Okay, yeah. So Vaibhav, I'm giving you a small assignment for the next class for you personally.
Okay, sir.
So, you need to measure and like not exactly. You need not measure exactly the height. Just have a rough idea about the height of your building. You need not measure exactly, like it will be dangerous for you to measure personally.
Okay. Okay.
So just have a basic idea. If your
Okay, sir.
height of your home is
Okay.
number of stories is one story, just take it as 3 meter or 3.5 meter. And if it is 2 story, take it as 7 meter total height.
Okay.
And then just check what is the spacing from the boundaries of that particular plot to the building. Understood? You need not measure it, measure the height of the building, so it will be dangerous. Be careful. You can't do that if you are not a trained professional. Don't do that. Just measure the distance from the boundary. Are you able to do that?
Okay, sir. We'll try.
Okay. So now, do not measure the height of the building. Okay, just take it roughly as 7 meter.
Okay.
If it is 2 story or if it is 1 story, just take it as 3.5 meter.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm telling you again, don't try to measure your height of the building. So it will be dangerous for you. You might slip from the building. Don't do that. Just measure the horizontal distance from the boundaries. So next, let me ask Surya Prakash.
Yes, sir.
So Surya Prakash, suppose the height of a building is 15 meters, 15 meters.
Yes.
So what should be the minimum spacing that need to be provided on each side of the building?
On front open space, 0.5 meter for every additional height.
Yeah, just calculate that in your own mind. The total height is 15 meters.
Mm.
So what should be the space provided? So up to 10 meters, we need to provide.
0.5 meter.
Up to 10 meters, we need to provide 3 meters.
Yes.
Okay, up to 10 meter high, we need to provide 3 meter spacing on the front side. And for every additional 3 meters, we should add the spacing on the front side by 0.5 meter. So in this imagine the height of the building is 15 meters. So how much we need to add for every additional 3 meter beyond 10 meter height? That means if it is 15 meter, then for 30 meters we need to add 3.5. We need to provide 3.5 meter on the front side. Understood? 3 plus 0.5 for every 3 meters.
Yes.
Surya Prakash, have you understood? Oh,
Mm.
did you understand?
Um,
Just tell me frankly, have you understood?
no, not very much clear, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll explain it once again. So
Right, sir.
up to 10 meters height, whatever the height of the building, up to 10 meters height, the minimum space that we need to provide on the front side is 3 meters. Understood?
Mm.
Okay, but
Yes, sir.
in our case, the total height of the building is 15 meters. Okay,
Okay.
so as per the provision, if you look into that thing, we'll understand that beyond 10 meters, okay, beyond 10 meters, for every additional height of 3 meters, we need to add 0.5 with 3 meters. Understood?
Okay.
So our height of the building is 15 meters or 16 meters. Let it be. It may be 16 meters. So for 10 meters, we have provided already uh, 3 meter in the front space, 3 meter as the front space. And then for 13 meters, we need to provide 3.5 meter. And for 16 meter, we will provide 3.5 plus 0.5 4 meter. Understood?
Okay, sir.
And if the height is 19 meters, then we will add again 0.5 with that. So the total height, total front space gap should be 4.5 meter. Understood?
Yeah.
Okay. So I hope everyone have understood what is written on the screen. And similarly, it will be applicable to rear open space and also the side open space. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So, and in the third case, we will follow the same thing for the front space and rear space. But the thing is like we will have to leave a minimum of 5 meter on any one of the side. It is contiguous to front side. Contiguous means it is adjacent to front side. That means either on the left side or on the right side of the building, we should provide 5 meter gap. If the height of the building, if the number of stories of the building is more than 4 stories. So is there any confusion in the third statement written on the screen? So, Raju. Sonu Raju?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you okay with the third statement? Have you understood what's meant by the third statement?
Okay, sir. Clear.
Could you please explain it to your friends in your own terms?
Uh, Buildings that have above 4 stories, they have to leave a minimum open space of 5 meters.
On which side?
Uh, any side that is joined to the front side.
Okay, yeah. So the rest thing will be as per our earlier version. Okay.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
And next is like sufficient slope for welding. Sonu, could you please mute your mic? Okay, thanks, Sonu. And for any other buildings which is constructed on small plots. So here, small plots means those plots which are having an area less than 125 square meter. So in such cases, it is not practical for us to follow the provisions said earlier. In that special cases, what we will do is like we will just give a front open space of 1.8 meter on the front side, and on the rear side, we will provide 1 meter. And on the side, rather than providing 1.2 and 1 meter on the sides, we'll just provide 0.9 meter and 0.6 meter on the sides of the building. So this is the fourth thing to be followed. So I have Vaibhav.
Yes, sir.
So just forget about the assignment that I've assigned to you.
Okay.
Okay, you need not do that. So I hope you've understood the basic principles to be followed while constructing a building. Isn't it, Vaibhav?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if someone approaches you to just with a plan, I mean, you might be a computer science engineer. Still, if some of your relatives just ask you to give some recommendations, so would you refer to all these things?
Yes, sir. I will try my best.
What?
I will try.
Okay, yeah. So these things should be followed as per the KMBR rules. And also, you need to look if there is any special provisions provided by our particular local self-governing body. We need to follow that too. So Vaibhav, don't just do that assignment. You need not do that assignment. So understood?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Need not do that assignment. And next thing is like, yeah, we'll move on to the next slide. So next slide is building rules and regulations based on permissible coverage and floor area ratio. So we have discussed about these two terms earlier. What are these two terms? Coverage we have discussed. 2 slides back. Coverage means the percentage of covered area with respect to the plot area. And regarding the floor area ratio, I hope you might remember that we have discussed it. Where was that? Yeah, I have this, the last bit, I guess. Just wait for a second. Yeah, here we have discussed about floor area ratio. So it is the quotient obtained by dividing the total floor area of all floors by the area of the plot. So we'll take the total floor area and we will divide it by the plot area. So it is also similar to the term FSI, floor space index. So this is actually a new term that's being incorporated in this field. So floor area ratio is synonymous. That means it is similar to, or it has the same meaning as that of floor space index. So we have discussed about coverage and also the floor space area. And now let us see what are the provisions that are being laid down on the basis of coverage and floor area ratio. So there are different type of buildings based on the use and occupancy of the building. There are different categories. So first category is a residential building. It's known as A1. So this is the different type of building that we have discussed earlier. You might remember we have discussed different categories of buildings from A to F or G. So there are different categories of building, and in first category we will just say about the residential. It's a simple residential building. It's A1. So the maximum permissible coverage allowed is 65%. That means we can only build up to 65% of the total plot area. That means if we have 10 meter square of that land, the maximum floor area or the maximum coverage shall be limited to 65% of that. That means we can only construct a building whose coverage is 6.5 meters, or in our local terms, we have a plot of 10 cent. So 1 cent is similar to nearly 40.4 meter square. So if we have a plot of 10 cent, then the area of the building should be limited within 6.5 cent. That means the coverage of the building should be limited within 6.5 cent. So if we look at the definition of coverage, so you will notice that in coverage, the thing is like it is synonymous to the area of building of the footprint. This is the thing what I was focusing on. So it is synonymous to area of building footprint. That means it has the same meaning as that of building footprint. You need to understand that if it is a 2-storied or 4-storied building, whatever it is, we will not consider the number of stories or number of floors. We will not just add like that. We have done similar to floor area. Here we will just take the footprint of the building. That means that means what we can say. That means the shadow of that building. If some light is projected from the exact above of the building, and it will display a shadow on the ground. So that's known as the building footprint. Or simply we can just take the top view of that building and how it gives an impression on the ground. That's known as building footprint. So you might have started learning engineering graphics, right? Can anyone respond?
No, sir.
You haven't started studying engineering graphics?
No,
So
sir.
in graphics you will learn all those things. What is meant by top view, side view, isometric view. There are different views. So top view means, so if you are you might have seen this Google Maps, in that we can see the top view of the building. Not exactly the top view, still almost. So building footprint is something similar, the impression made by the top view on the ground. It's known as building footprint. So when we talk about the coverage, we'll just take building footprint into consideration. So if you notice the figure given on the right bottom of the slide, you can see that the particular building is like 3-story building. It's a 3-story building, but the building footprint consists just of the area which made an impression on the ground. It's just a single area. So just the shadow of that building or the impression made by the building on the ground, we'll just take that. We won't consider the number of stories, number of floors. So that's known as coverage. And here we need to understand that if the coverage is limited to 65% of the plot area, sorry, the coverage is limited to 65% of the plot area, then we can say that the maximum area on which the building is located should be 6.5 cent if our total plot area is 10 cent. That means we'll have to leave the other space as open space. That's known as coverage. And next is maximum permissible floor area ratio. So floor area ratio I have discussed. In floor area ratio, what we do is like we will take the floor areas of all stories of the building. So earlier in this figure, if it is 3-story, you will take the floor area of each story. That's known as total floor area, and then we will divide it by the plot area. So for a residential A1 building, the maximum floor area ratio is 3. That means if the size of the plot is 10 meters square, the maximum floor area ratio that we can construct on that particular building is 30 meters square. Understood? So floor area ratio is actually the total floor area of all the stories of that particular building divided by the plot area of that total plot. So if the plot area is 10 meters square, we have an area of 10 meters square, then the total floor area should be limited. That means total floor area means all the floor areas of each story should, all stories should be limited to 30 meters square. That's known as residential A1 class building. And for special residential A2, in special residential we'll be dealing with residential buildings for VIPs or some special persons or some something like that. So in special residential, the maximum permissible coverage should be 65%, and the maximum area should be floor area should be 2.5%. And in the educational, that's actually a category B building. In that category, the maximum permissible coverage of the plot area is limited to 35%. That means for an education building, what does this mean? Education building should always have an open ground. It should be larger than that of a residential building. That is only we are allowed to construct. We are allowed to give a coverage of 35% of the total plot area. Rest 65% should be left free. That means you might know what is the reason. For schools or colleges, there should be a lot of open grounds and open areas and parks. So it will be different from that of a residential building. So only up to 35% we are allowed to construct in for an education building, and the maximum floor area ratio is 2.5. And then next is medical or hospital. So here we are allowed to construct up to 40% of the total plot area. So the coverage shall be limited to 40% of total plot area, and the maximum floor area shall be 2. And assembly D, it's an assembly building. That means it's an auditorium. It's similar to that of earlier thing. The maximum coverage is limited to 40%, and also the maximum floor area is limited to 1.5. And assembly office or business building, similarly 40 and 2. Mercantile or commercial building, 65 and 2.5. So industrial 40 1.5. Small industrial 60 and 2.5. Storage 60 and 2.5. It's hazardous building 30 and 1. It is hazardous of grade 2. So it is I category I of grade 1, 30 and 1, and hazardous category I grade 2, that is 25 and 0.7. So these are the different floor areas to be followed. So I hope you have understood what is meant by coverage and maximum floor area ratio. Anyone has any doubt, you may ask. don't feel reluctant to ask your doubts. So I think these areas are much important from the exam point of view. You might be asked to write down the uh, maximum permissible coverage and maximum permissible floor area ratio for each for different categories of building. So does anyone have any doubt on the same? You may ask. Okay, if you do not have any doubt, then let me proceed to the next slide. Can I proceed? Please someone respond. Can I proceed to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in the next slide, we will there are some special provisions. Understood. Here it is known as coastal regulation zone. Earlier we have discussed about National Building Code, then Kerala Municipal Building Codes, etc. And now there is something new term which come into play. It's known as coastal regulation zone. So what is in the coastal regulation zone? We'll have a regulated area which is near to a coastal or any other water bodies where no construction activity is allowed. You might have just 1 year ago, exactly 1 year ago, in our media, you might have seen from the media sources that there are 3 residential buildings were demolished in Kochi. Why? Because they have not followed the coastal regulations on provisions and norms. That's why they were demolished. So you need to understand earlier, as I said, even though we have a common rules, National Building Code and the Kerala Municipal Building Rules, it will be different according to the geographical condition of that particular area. So at that particular area where these flats were built up, there was a coastal regulation zone which had to be followed. Even though they owned those land, they were not supposed to construct in that particular area, which is very close to our water bodies. So this is known as coastal regulation zone, and that zone, the no construction activities allowed, or it will be limited. In some cases, it will be limited if the building is very small. Then there will be there can be some excuses given, but for a large building may not be is not recommended at that place. So we'll just see why ZRZ forms, coastal regulation zone forms. So to ensure livelihood security to the fisher community and other local communities living in the coastal areas. So what happens if we encroach these ZRZ zones, CRZ norms or zones? What happens is like a local community will lose their livelihood. So next is to conserve and protect coastal structures, this unique environment and its marine area. So protect the coastal structures. You should understand that when we construct something very close to this water bodies or marine areas, we tend to destroy that in near future. That particular water body may not be able to get the water from the rainfall from the catchment area, and as years progress, it might destruct the whole habitat of that particular coastal or marine zone. And next is to promote through sustainable manner based on principles taking into account the dangers of natural hazard in coastal areas, sea level rise due to global warming. So this also need to be considered. So due to global warming, our sea levels are keeping on rising, and if we construct a building very close to coastal regulation zone, what happens is like in near future, if something happens similar to what have happened in 2004 tsunami, it can destruct our building and it will affect the safety of the occupants. And next is like you need to understand that it is not at all recommended to construct a concrete building or whether it's a steel building also. near to coastal zones, because the water will be salty and it can attack our building, and in the long run, our durability of the building will be destructed. So hence, there in several perspectives, our government have given some coastal regulation zone norms. So these need to be followed for the safety of the environment and also the safety of the occupants. So coastal stretches of seas, bays, estuary, creek, rivers, backwaters were declared as coastal regulation zone under Coastal Zone Regulation Notification 1991. So you understand that it's not only applicable to seas or oceans, even bays, estuaries, creeks. Creek means small stream, or rivers or backwaters will also be declared as ZR coastal regulation zone under a particular act in 1991. And they have classified it into 4 different zones for the purpose of regulation. So let's see what are the different zones they have classified. So in the coastal regulation zone 1, those areas included are the ecologically sensitive areas and the geomorphological features which play an important role in maintaining the integrity of the coast. Example, let's just see the example, and if we see the example, it will be much easier for us to understand what is meant by ecological sensitive areas. Example, mangrove. Mangrove means in Malayalam what we call Kandalkad. You might see a lot in Kannur coastal areas, especially in Papanacheri, I think. So mangrove means it is actually the Kandalkad what we have seen, and there are coral reefs or corals, and there are some associated biodiversity, nesting ground of birds, etc. So all these things are ecologically sensitive areas which has an important role in maintaining the integrity of the coast. So what all these mangrove does is like it has a lot of birds and other fishes have their habitat as mangroves, so they need to be conserved. So if all these things are destroyed, what will happen is like later on it can affect the food security of other species living, and later on, since we know how the food cycle goes on, in that particular food cycle will be disrupted, and ultimately who will be the loser? The loser will be the humans, because we have to depend on our water bodies for several things, for a livelihood. Many people might have a livelihood based on water bodies, and we have we are taking a lot of food from water bodies, and also for water transport. All those things we have to depend on the water bodies. So the ultimate loser will be humans if we are not taking care of our coastal zones. So area between low tide line and high tide line. Why this need to be considered? Because there are some areas which differentiate between low tide line and high tide line. So what's the difference between in this case, it's actually a natural cleaning process. If you notice in Kutanad areas where the people are living much below the sea level. So what happens is like there was a natural cleaning process by the nature where all these bases will be dumped and which will be stored in those places which are below the sea level. And during monsoons and high tide times, the seawater will come inside the villages and these water bodies, and they will take all the waste. That means it's not the plastic waste what I'm talking about, it's the decomposed organic waste and all those things, and it will take the sea will take it from the water bodies inside our areas, and all those, what we can say, inland waterways, all those waste which has been dumped by the natural. I'm not talking about, you understand, I'm not talking about the plastic waste that are being dumped by humans. I'm talking about the waste that is being created naturally. All those leaves or all those what we can say, sand deposits. All those things are also considered as waste, natural waste. So it's like actually natural cleaning process should not be disturbed. If it is disturbed, what will happen? The habitat will get destroyed. And this is the coastal regulation zone 1 area. So no construction activity is actually be carried out in ZR1. So it's actually very difficult to get a permit to construct anything in coastal regulation zone. And next is the coastal regulation zone, which are we'll see which are activities are permissible in coastal regulation zone 1. Things like no new construction shall be permitted except projects of atomic energy, pipelines, conveying systems, installation of weather radar for monitoring cyclones, construction of harbor sealing, desalination plants, storage of non-hazardous cargo. So only these things are allowed in coastal regulation zone. So you'll understand why projects of atomic energy is important for us. And you can say in most cases, this atomic energy projects will be constructed close to the coastal zones. And we can see other which is very near to our place in Tamil Nadu, Purankulam. So it's also constructed in a coastal zone. And all these things what is mentioned or which has the exception or to get the permit in coastal regulation zone are all constructed by government agencies. So no private, it's very difficult for any private agency to construct something in coastal regulation zone. And coastal regulation 2, we'll see what is meant by coastal regulation 2. So those areas that have been developed, so area within existing municipal limits or in other existing legally designated urban areas up to or close to the shoreline. So this little bit close to the shoreline, that areas have been developed within the municipal limits or other existing legal limits. It's not it's the outer side of the coastal regulation zone 1. So we will start with the coast water body, then there will be coastal regulation zone 1, then 2, like that. So we will see what is the permissible activities in coastal regulation zone 2. So building shall be permitted on the landward side of existing road, on the landward side of the existing structures. So no new dumping of soil and constructing is not allowed. So only those things which are permitted, which is on the landward side of existing road, and it should be already a land. We cannot remove the water body from there, and we cannot dump soil into that area, and we cannot construct anything. So it should be already a land, and some reconstruction activities are also allowed for authorized building, and facilities for fuel, desalination plants, and associated facilities. So desalination plant is actually for drinking water purpose. That means what happens is like you will take water from the sea and you will desalinate it and we will supply. So this thing in future we will have to depend on all these things for drinking water. And then storage of non-hazardous cargo. So these things are permissible in coastal regulation zone 2. And in coastal regulation zone 3, we'll see the area that are relatively undisturbed and those do not belong to either 1 or 2nd zone, which include coastal zone in rural areas, developed and undeveloped, and also means areas within municipal limits or in other legally designated urban areas. So those doesn't belong to coastal regulation 1 or 2, but which are part of some municipal areas. So which are activities are permissible in coastal regulation zone 3. So no construction can be permitted for repairs or construction, except for repairs or reconstruction. Construction or reconstruction require permission from competent authority. Horticultural gardens or parks are permitted. Horticulture means like maybe agriculture related to vegetable. All these things are permitted. Projects related to atomic energy, desalination plants, construction of sewage treatment units with approval from Pollution Control Board, facilities for local fishing communities. So in this coastal regulation zone 3, these things will be allowed. So coastal regulation zone 3 is actually that areas that are relatively undisturbed. That means it is not that ecologically sensitive, as we have seen earlier in coastal regulation zone 1, similar to all those mangrove forests and coral reefs. Those areas are very ecologically sensitive, and in coastal regulation zone 3 it is not that sensitive as earlier. And next is coastal regulation zone 4. So which are areas included? The water area from low tide line to 12 nautical miles on the seaward side. It shall include the water area of tidal influenced water body from the mouth of water body at the sea up to the influence of the tide. So it will include the water area of tidal influenced water body from the mouth of the water body at the sea up to the influence of the tide. So wherever this tide comes, is known as coastal regulation zone 4. So we will see what all are happening. Traditional fishing and related activities are permitted with the condition that no waste shall be done. The coastal regulation zone, this is the thing. So you will see it is a much clearer explanation for the zones that I've explained earlier. You can see in 2001 notification, 2008 notification. So as years progress, we will become more strict in all these regulations. And then in this case, we'll see, you can see from the screen how it is different in coming areas, in coming years. So I'll first talk about, I'll only talk about coastal regulations on notification 2018. So in coastal regulation zone 1A. In earlier 2011, there was only coastal regulation zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and then NDZ, that is no development zone. And in 2018, it became more strict and more specific. It became coastal regulation zone 1A, 1B, 2, 3A, 3B, 4A, 4B. So inside these zones, there were few subdivisions were also added. So we'll see in 2018 what are the ZR1A. This is a cost sensitive areas. You can see where is ZR1A. We'll see here. ZR1A where I am pointing my mouse pointer. So this is coastal regulations on 1A and coastal regulations on 1B is here. So coastal regulation 1A is actually an eco-sensitive area, and coastal regulation B is actually intertidal area. Coastal regulations on 1B is intertidal area, and ZR2 areas which have been developed up to or close to a shore. Where is coastal regulation zone 2? See, these areas. So in two areas which have been developed up to or close to the shore. All these areas will come under coastal regulation zone 2. There are also some provisions in this, but there will be some relaxation when we compare it with coastal regulation zone 1. And then in coastal regulation zone 3A, where the population density is more than 2,161 square kilometer. And means in 1 square kilometer, the population density is more than 2,161. This area, coastal regulation zone 3A. You can see this area where I am pointing my mouse, coastal regulation 3A. And in 3B, and the density, population density will be less than 2,161. So you need to understand that in whatever country, the population density will be more near to the coast. So rather than in the inside of the country, even in our country too, the population density is always higher near to the coast. So the average population density of Kerala is around 981 people per square kilometer. But in coastal zones, if you can see that in many cases, the population density will go above 2,000 people per square kilometer. And 3 and 3B, you'll see. In 3A, the population density is more than 2,161 person per square kilometer. 3B is less than 3,100 per kilometer. And in 4A, coastal zone regulation zone 4A, 12 nautical miles from the low tide line towards the sea. So nautical mile is actually it's actually the used to measure distance in sea. So in 1 nautical mile means it will be nearly equal to 1.8 kilometers. So up to 12 nautical miles from the low tide line towards the sea. You'll see there's a low tide line here. It is in dark blue, and there is a high tide line here. So it is 12 nautical miles from low tide line. So in those areas, what happens is, like earlier we have discussed, some fishing activities will be permitted, all those things. And in coastal regulations on 4A, 4B, there we'll see there is coastal regulations on 4. 4B. So their tidal influenced water bodies. So you can see this is actually the coastal regulation zone 4B, where there is some tidal influenced water bodies. And next, no development zone. That's actually 50 meters from high tide line in CR3 areas, 200 meters from high tide lines in CR3B areas. So you can see how this happens. See, this is actually the high tide line that I'm pointing at now. And if it is in the area of 3A, coastal regulation zone 3A, then it should be no development zone means no development activities allowed in that area. We should concept only those things which is 50 meters from high tide line in even though it's a 3A zone, and in a 3B zone it should be 200 meters from the high tide line. You can see how this line the area gets enlarged. So this is actually the coastal regulation zone. This is actually a graphical representation of the same. So with this, I'm concluding this class. Does anyone have any doubt? You may point out it in a Google Classroom, or you may mail me. So I hope everyone have understood. So we'll conclude this class. So is Chantana, have you understood today's class?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I hope if everyone has followed what I was talking about. So with this, we will end our first module. All these things we have discussed earlier. And first module is almost over. Then from next class, we'll start discussing the second module. So thank you all. You may leave the class.